Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. So, joining me today is Laura. Laura, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm always a fan of having a great conversation with someone all over the world, right? Like it's just mind blowing that we can be sitting in different parts of the world in our different areas and have this beautiful conversation together.
That's the power of technology.
Sure is.
Yeah. So, Laura, where in the world are you?
I am located in Pennsylvania inside of the US.
Oh, nice. That's so awesome. Do you guys get snow there too?
We do. So I'm on the East Coast. In the
Okay.
East Coast, we get all of the seasons pretty
Yeah.
pretty intently. So we definitely get snow.
Okay. Yeah, we do here too. It's so bad. It feels like every winter is my first winter. Yeah. So Laura, let's get this show rolling. Can you tell us more about you and what you do?
Absolutely. So I have been an entrepreneur for 16 years.
Mhm,
I've grown a branding agency, which is still up and running, alive and well.
mhm,
I purchased a commercial building that we're renting out and renovating. But my heart and my focus right now is on alignment coaching for female entrepreneurs and hosting my show, which is called the Gutsy Podcast.
mhm,
And so I'm really working with women, particularly women
mhm,
in business around the world, to
mhm,
help them rediscover who they are, what they
mhm,
actually want, how they actually want to live this life, and
mhm,
then building the confidence and the courage to take those next steps to start bringing it to life.
mhm. Oh my. I love what you're doing. Oh my, because women need the help, especially in the work field in different areas in life, because for so long we've been underestimated by other women, unfortunately, and by society in general. And I love that you're focusing on us women. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. It's we have so much potential,
Mm,
right? And we have so much potential when we do this together.
mhm,
And
mhm,
when we can support one another and know that someone else's win does not mean your loss,
mhm,
someone else's right does not mean you're wrong. We can just take all that stuff off the table and see like we're all just individuals
mhm,
trying to create something in this life that is meaningful and joyful and
mhm.
fulfilling.
Yeah.
So, and when we can do that alongside other, in my case, and other women in business,
Mhm,
we're all building our empires next to one another.
mhm.
There's no need to tear each other's stuff down.
Yeah.
Absolutely not in my world anyway.
Mhm, mhm,
And when we band together, we can really help support growth in so many different ways, and everything
mhm.
benefits when we do that together.
Women are powerhouses. Women are so powerful. Some of us don't believe that though, which is so sad. And I hope through the work that you're doing, people can, uh, women specifically can, come up, come higher, and be the queen that they are.
Well, that's the thing that I see most often is the lack of self-belief,
Mm,
the lack of confidence, the lack of follow through, because now we've talked ourselves out of things, right? And so a lot of the work that we're doing,
mhm,
90% of it is in the mind,
mm,
right? Like that's the conversations you have with yourself is the loudest conversation that you'll ever have.
mhm,
And it's honestly the thing that's either going to guide you forward, that's going to open up opportunities, or it's going to be the thing that stops you every single time.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so when we build that self belief and give ourselves a little bit of credit, right? Like
Mhm,
we don't give ourselves enough credit.
mhm,
We are incredible beings. And when we start to believe that,
mhm.
my friend, that is where the magic starts to happen.
Hmm. And we all have pixie dust everywhere. We just gotta grab it and spread it like wildfire. Just let it spread because it's contagious. And I know as a woman, as a mother, I know my kids, they see what I do and they see how I do it or why I do it. It's finding meaning and purpose in what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're not only we strengthening ourselves in our own lives, but if we have children in our lives, we're showing them.
Mhm.
So if we're constantly talking bad about ourselves out loud and we're putting ourselves down and we're not going for things and we're just living this like, I have to do this today.
Mm.
They are little sponges.
Mhm.
They hear it, they see it, and from a very young age, that becomes their new belief as well.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so not only are you setting an example for yourself, which I believe is where we should always start. I mean, a total side tangent. We're taught as women too that we have to put our children first.
Mm. Mm.
And
That. Mhm.
we must put ourselves first. And people are like, oh, how could you say that? Oh, that's selfish. Oh, okay, listen, if I'm not well, if I am not grounded, if I'm not centered, who can I be for them?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I need to prioritize myself, which then further allows me to better support, love on, be present with them. And
Mhm.
when we do that and we show our kids that habit, that belief system, that
Mhm.
nurturing,
Mhm.
that becomes their core belief.
Mhm.
And what a beautiful gift to give them.
Yes, absolutely. And so many of us, especially, excuse me, as mothers, we give up on our dreams, on ourselves, and we're just existing. We're not really living, and we're barely getting by. But with what you're doing, it is a testament that it's possible to achieve more, to become more for us and for our kids.
Absolutely.
Hmm. For those who don't know, can you tell us what is an alignment coach, which is what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So alignment coaching is, it's really helping people to rediscover themselves,
Mm.
right? We get caught in what we should do,
Mhm.
the expectations from others, the thoughts, the ideas that we are, presented with online every single day.
Mhm.
We go outside of ourselves for the answers all the time.
Mhm.
And alignment is really getting back in touch with who you are and what you actually want.
Mm.
So when you're making decisions, you're deciding from you. When
Mhm.
you're moving forward, you're grounded in that decision. When you are choosing to try something new or expand your business or shift something in your life, I've checked in with myself first,
Mhm.
right? I'm doing what I want instead of what I should.
Mm.
And when we start to make decisions from our own aligned center,
Mhm.
the world changes. Literally, your inner world, your outer world. And I think, gosh, I think if everyone in the world were living in their own version of alignment, what an empowering planet we would be on right now.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
Because in alignment, things happen easier. There's more joy, there's more fulfillment, there's more time, there's more presence, right? Like all of these things that we're all trying to find these quick fixes for, right? Like, how do I fix this? When is the last time you asked yourself, what do I actually want?
Mm.
And that's the big one. And one of the places where I usually start with people is like, what do you want? And because I'm working with women, more often than not, the answer is, I have no idea.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, that's where we begin.
Mhm.
So alignment coaching is really helping and guiding these people to rediscover those things, to find out what brings them joy, to find out what's really calling them, to find out what happiness actually feels like to them,
Mhm.
and then backing it up with practical ways to start to implement it.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Give me one or two scenarios of how you would help a client. Let's say I'm your client and I've never worked with you. I don't know what an alignment coach is. How would you approach me with your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of different scenarios that I've worked with some women in business on. So first, there was a gal that was really underestimating
Mm.
how amazing she was,
Mm.
right? She had a beautiful gift in the healing world, Reiki, tarot cards, energy healing type of work.
Mhm.
But she was like minimizing her abilities by undercharging,
Mhm.
by not putting herself out there,
Mhm.
by really just like, if nobody sees me, then it's safer here. And so what we uncovered was like she really had so much more to give. And we worked with building her confidence
Mhm.
and starting to be able to be seen and to be heard.
Mhm.
And so by her stepping into her aligned version, She raised her prices. She expanded her footprint. She is booked out for months at a time. I think at one point she said she like 3 or 4 times her income for the month. But more than any of those things,
Mm-hmm.
she's happy. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like she's containing herself anymore, right? She's free to move about. She's free to add new services or take things away when she doesn't want them anymore, or expand when she's ready, or, pump the brakes when she needs to. Those are all empowered decisions because she's discovered what alignment is. So that's a pretty powerful story, because we forget that we have options and that we get to decide.
Mm-hmm.
We often unintentionally give away our power to everything else and everyone else for them to decide on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably one of my favorite stories. Another scenario with alignment is, I see a lot of women in business that have created businesses. So a lot of the women I work with are a couple of years in. They've seen success. They're doing their thing, but it just something doesn't feel right anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't know if it's because my mission has changed, but I haven't tapped into what that is. Maybe I'm too in the weeds of like all the details of the business. Maybe it's time to delegate something. Maybe I'm just offering a bunch of services and I just don't love most of them anymore, right? Like there's just so many different reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
so through alignment coaching, we are really filtering everything through the lens of what feels right and what makes me feel alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't feel great, then we start to look at how do we transition it. And we look at, okay, if what makes you feel alive is not yet in existence, then we start to put things into place to call that in and make that our part of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of this like tinkering and making these small decisions that add up to really big change and impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Um, as you were talking, two words came to mind: growth and change.
Absolutely.
And they can work together or against. Either way, it's important to identify how to work with them within ourselves, because so many of us look for help and rescue on the outside, and we don't really go inward to really marinate all our gifts and unleash them. And
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Tell me more about your podcast.
Yeah. So it's called the Gutsy Podcast.
Mhm.
It is, you can see me smile. It is one of my favorite things in the world to do, because it gives me the opportunity and the platform to share this
Mhm.
message with women that are hungry to hear
Mm,
and to grow.
mm,
And I'm smiling so big right now because I just found out this morning that it is currently featured in the US, on Amazon Music podcast feature list. So it's
mhm.
on the homepage of Amazon Music right now. So that makes me
Whoa.
really over the moon, excited, and very, very proud. I started interviewing entrepreneurs about 10 years ago,
Mhm,
because through building the branding agency, I found that I just really loved having the conversations with the owner
mhm,
about what was happening in their mind,
mm,
right? Like what makes you excited? What keeps you up at night? What are some desires that you have? Where do you feel like things are draining you? Just like
mhm,
all of these thoughts and feelings that so many business owners have, but we don't have the space, the capacity, or the support to voice it,
mhm,
right? That vulnerability is pretty scary sometimes.
mhm.
And so I'm like, ooh, vulnerability makes me excited. I I I don't know why I was given that mission, but here we are.
Yeah, yeah.
So I started interviewing these entrepreneurs in my office, and it got to a point where it was growing, but I needed to shift things because monetarily it wasn't making sense.
Mm,
So I thought, well, I'll figure out how to launch a podcast. And so
mhm,
that's what I did. I shifted that. Then it was called the Green Couch Project. Now it is the Gutsy Podcast. It's
mhm,
4.5 years old now. It's a global top 100 podcast under entrepreneurship.
mhm,
Now featured on Amazon, which is pretty cool. But where that mission has carried forward and stays true, and
mhm,
and it is to have very raw, honest conversations about all the things that we're all thinking and feeling,
mhm,
and backed with practical ways to do something about it. Right. So I'm very much into energy, spirituality, tapping into our energy, our auras. right?
Mhm.
And but we need to tap into that energy field, but then we need to do something with it, right? Like if
Mhm.
we're always up in the energy, then nothing gets done.
Mhm.
But if we're always doing things, then we're not tapping into the energy. And so I'm a huge fan of combining the two. And that's what we do on the podcast. I have a guest on every week for Tuesday episodes. And on Thursday, I have short micro episodes called Power Back episodes,
Mhm.
where it's like a little coaching session with me. We hyper focus on a very specific topic for you to take
Mhm.
action on.
Mhm. Wow. I love that. Congratulations. I'm so
Thank you.
happy for you. You
Thank you.
deserve it. And so, so happy. Um, yeah, as you were talking, I can see that you provide the tools and you also guide and you show people uh, where to go, how to go, because so many people in business, they have an idea, they can see the end goal, they don't know how to start. If they do,
Yes.
there are things that pulls them back, and then with those, it can impact their mentality, how they view their visions and dreams. And obviously, I think that as we grow and evolve, so does our dreams. It's learning to adjust to the time and space that we're in. And I love that you use energy. Oh my goodness, the universe is answering all my prayers because I'm talking to so many incredible people. Full interviews I've heard so far. Yours is the fourth that talks about energy and how we can harness it and bring it in and use it and as a powerful tool. So that's so cool. Tell me more about spirituality and energy. Kind of expand on that for me.
Yeah. So I think it's so unique to each person, right? I just want to acknowledge that spirituality, energy, intuition, all the auras, all that stuff it's very personal,
Yeah.
right? And so I think it's really important to understand what it means for you as the listener.
Mhm.
Um, for me, it's really tapping my intuition is on point. It is on point. It's a muscle that I have built and strengthened over the years, but
Mhm.
it is just something that I was also born with, right? And I think everyone is born with their own version of intuition. But for me, it's kind of my North Star. It's
Mhm.
my guiding point.
Mhm.
And so I'm really sensitive to the energies of a room. I'm very sensitive to the energies on the internet. And I have to be very intentional about who I'm spending time with and when my social battery is draining.
Mhm.
Also tapping into things like, some of my spiritual practices, for instance, like I'm really big into grounding, like physical feet on the ground,
Mhm.
releasing stuff from the day, absorbing new, fresh, clean energy to sleep
Mhm.
on for the night.
Mhm.
Crystals are a big part of my life. Tarot cards are a big part of my life. But in the just like day to day practice, again, a little bit of a side note, I think sometimes spirituality can get really complicated. And especially if you see people online, like you have to do this and you have to do that.
Mhm.
Just do what you need to do, right? Like whatever feels right to you. And it could be
Yeah.
super simple. It might be very complex. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you works for you.
Mhm.
So for me, just day to day, it's really tapping into how does this make me feel?
Mhm.
Right? My intuition will tell me before my brain can ever get involved. My
Oh,
body
good.
speaks
Oh,
to me.
good. Yeah, before the brain. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's an important point to bring up because the brain doesn't understand energy, I don't believe.
Mhm. Mm-mm.
It it wants to keep us safe and it wants to fix things, right? Because it wants things to be peaceful. It wants us to be happy. But it complicates things because it's like, oh no, no, and we get into overthinking, we start chattering, and it just it gets very noisy very quickly. So for me, when I'm making decisions, when I'm interacting with somebody, when I'm like faced with an opportunity, how do I feel, right? And so for me, mostly I feel it in my gut. So there's typically like your head, your heart, and your gut tend to be the three common spaces of intuition where you might hear or feel it.
Mhm.
You could feel it in your big left toe. I don't know, like everybody's everybody's unique and different. But I do a gut check. simple terms, I do a gut check, and my gut will tell me like something's not feeling right and I can't explain it, but I have to trust that.
Mm-hmm.
Or this feels incredibly right and it doesn't make sense to anybody, but I know that I have to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then getting out of the way and trusting my body, trusting my intuition, and
Mm-hmm.
giving myself permission to move forward accordingly, regardless of what I've been told.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Um, yeah, you're right. All of us are born with it. Some of us just don't use it. We don't use
Yes.
common sense.
I mean, common sense is important,
Yeah, some of us
that's
we
kind of
just
baseline.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love everything you just described because I'm into all those, all of them.
Excellent.
I use tarot, crystals. I have crystals right now on my space area as I talk, and I smudge and essential oil and
Yep.
meditation and all of it. And I don't know, I'm special, I guess, because I can connect with what people call the other side and guides and all of it. It's very, very cool. I'm always giddy and excited when I hear and talk to people who are doing similar practice. Yeah, and meditation. Oh boy, that took me a while because my mind, my mind, it's just it used to be so loud, the thoughts. So when people talked about meditation, I'm like, that's boring. And then I try and try again, again and again, and I'm hooked for life.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, like giving yourself the chance to try and experiment with things, right? And knowing that at first it's probably going to feel weird,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're probably going to sit there and be like, well, this isn't working, right? And then you're going to think about, you know, what you got to do tomorrow and what's for dinner tonight and, just a million other things. And, but even with meditation, I think it looks so different to everybody, right? It's not just sitting in silence with your feet crossed. It could be,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for me, I find that I meditate when I'm grounding at nighttime. And that doesn't look like anything, right? But it works for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing more than just like letting go, being in the moment and receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that enough times in a way that feels right to you, it'll really guide you in a lot of beautiful ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Can you tell me more about your company? How do you say it works?
Works,
Oh,
works,
think-
Works and Co. Yes,
okay.
Works and Co. WORX.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the company that's 16 years old. She's a well-oiled machine. I reference her as a she because she is. But we focus on building brands
Mm-hmm.
for growing small businesses. So we work
Mm-hmm.
a lot with businesses that have been in business for a couple of years that are ready to kind of up level their visual identity. So things like logo design, your color scheme, your fonts, your business aesthetics, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think about interior design for a building, you think about branding for your business, right? Kind of a, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a visual way to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really cool thing. One thing I never realized, or I did not realize going into it, was how psychological branding is and how personal branding is,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really a reflection of who you are and what you stand for and what you're growing and how you're putting yourself out into the world. And so we're really often taking into account a lot of feelings and ideas and so many different pieces. So it's fascinating. It's interesting because I think that's where my passion and interest for working with the mind
Mm-hmm.
started,
Mm-hmm.
because I realized very quickly how personal branding actually is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, it is. It is. It is. Yeah, how did I do on my podcast? The picture of it, because I have no experience in that. You're right, it's personal. My logo is intentionally not connected to anything podcasting. It's water. And how I personalize that is that water gives life. It can take away, it can wash, it can cleanse. Some people might see a water logo on a podcast. Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, so I can
I
agree
mean,
with that.
I think that that's one of the most important foundational pieces of a brand is their intention behind it.
Mhm,
What is the story behind it?
mhm,
What is the purpose and the meaning behind it? And
mhm,
how does that support the greater mission of what we are creating and building?
mhm,
So I think it's fantastic that you have chosen something that one clearly has meaning to you, but two has a greater meaning for the impact that you're creating.
mhm, thank you. Because my logo is healing together. And when I created it, water can heal, it can wash, and all of those amazing things that water does. Yeah. So you're a speaker. Tell me more, because I'm terrified of speaking in front of people.
Yeah, I once was as well, and I'm certain that there will be another scenario in my life where maybe I will be terrified again, as I continue to grow into new levels.
Mhm,
But I can remember the very, very, very first time that I ever spoke was in front of like, I don't know, 8 or 10 people.
mhm.
When I tell you that I thought my body was going to shut down, I I literally I was like, this is it. This is where I collapse. My legs were literally shaking like jello, right? You hear people talk about like jello legs or rubber band legs. I experienced it. The redness of my chest started on my chest and moved
Yeah.
up my neck and like a turtleneck, right? Wrapped around my face. My voice was shaking, right? My hands are shaking. I'm sweating. I'm like, this is awful. Why would anybody ever do this?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because gosh, that was almost 16 years ago. And it's interesting again how like seeds are planted on your journey and we don't always understand them in the moment, but we can look back and see how everything led to this.
Mhm, mhm,
Because as I was building the branding agency and learning that I was intrigued by the mind, I'm also in this group where every single week I am forced to stand up, not forced, but like that was just part of the nobody was like walking around being like, now it's your turn, get up. But
mhm,
every week we had to go around the table and everybody stood up individually to say something.
mhm,
So I was also at that point building my confidence in getting up in front of people.
mhm,
And so right now, today in this season, I can see how both of those roads led me to this
mm,
because had I been presented with the opportunities that I have now 16 years ago, I would have absolutely failed.
mm,
Right. My nervous system wasn't prepared. My body wasn't prepared. My mind wasn't prepared. Right. I didn't have the perspective yet.
mhm,
But I'm building all of these things as I go. And I'm like, sometimes I sit here and I'm like, oh my gosh, all of this makes so much sense now. And now I get to speak, just a couple of weeks ago I had the honor of speaking to 150 women locally, which was amazing. And when I got up on that stage, I was like, this feels so insanely right. And I'm not nervous at all.
mhm,
But I've had the opportunity to speak, at this point, hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. And I've built the confidence over time. So, motivational speaking, talking about mindset, talking about alignment, talking about some practical ways to take action again.
mhm,
It's just something that I feel so, so in alignment with
mhm,
that it it almost feels effortless sometimes.
mhm. Wow, that's awesome. And sometimes when we find our passion and purpose, we know that's where we're supposed to be, and there's no turning back or no doubts. And I think that's what you found, your purpose, your mission, and the fears and everything else just fades away. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we want to jump straight to the confidence because that's more comfortable,
Mhm.
right? But the confidence comes from doing.
Mm.
The confidence comes from being. The
Mhm.
confidence comes from trying, right? Like you don't just like go to the store and buy a box of confidence off the shelf and like consume it and now like magically here we are. It really comes from putting yourself in situations where maybe you don't really understand what you're doing, right? Maybe you're afraid that people are going to find out that you're a fake or that it's going to appear that you don't know what you're doing, but that's you're literally building the confidence in that moment. It
Mhm.
just doesn't necessarily feel like it when you're in that scenario.
Mhm. Well, thank you. You just described my life in the past. in the past almost 2 years with podcasting. I'm always blunt and tell people, hey, I don't know which category or area of line of work that you do, but this girl right here has no experience. I didn't go to school for it. It's all coming from within and from my story. Yeah, you're right. Maybe one day over time I can speak in front of people, but
I believe
I'm
so.
afraid of the opposite though, because I get outer body experiences like I'm numb, like I'm at the point of it's past not giving an F. It's beyond that, where I have to restrict myself in what I'm saying. I'm afraid of the opposite of saying things that maybe people don't like, but I find power in saying them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I coach very similarly. So I'm direct, right?
Mhm.
My clients are not coming to me because they want fluffy
Yeah.
shit, stroke my hair kind of advice. That if
Mm.
that's what you're looking for, you have come to the wrong corner of the world, my friend. But if you want someone to help hold you accountable, to call things for what they are, to give you straight talk
Mhm.
while also supporting you to the depths that you may have never experienced before,
Mhm.
now we have a conversation to be had. Because I'm not gonna blow smoke up your ass. Like it's just I just don't know how to do that. I don't have capacity in my body.
Mhm.
But if you want to make a change and you want someone to be like, hey, here's what I see. This is what we need to do. Are you willing to do it? Great, let's do it.
Mhm.
Then I can help you all day long.
Mhm.
So there's the right person for everybody, right? But my style is I reference myself as a swift kick in the mental ass,
Mm.
followed by the best hug you've ever had.
Mm.
And
We
that's
all need
everything.
those.
It's everything that you need to know about my style.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very similar and very direct. When I started the podcast, people left. People I thought were friends, or people always have something to say, and I'm like, I don't care, right? When it's coming from a place of authenticity, there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, uh, addressing it in a way that would be fruitful for others to have.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Also, you're an author. How many books?
Well, my soul has many books to share with the world. um, I've written one book. It's called Brand Starter. It's actually more of a workbook.
Mhm.
It's designed to help brand new businesses to know like where to even start because that's a very complicated season, right? To know what to do first.
Mhm.
So Brand Starter is my first book. Writing that book, I hated every second of it, if I'm being really honest with you.
Mhm.
It just I think that process taught me a lot.
Mhm.
It taught me a lot about what I needed to learn.
Mhm.
It taught me a lot about the people that I invited to be a part of the journey,
Mhm.
right? That's
Mhm.
a whole thing. But it also taught me about the diligence and the consistency that is required
Mhm.
to birth a book.
Mhm.
And so I wrote that many, 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 many years ago, turned it into an online workshop, and I have I have books in me now that are
Mhm.
just about ready to come out. So I'm excited to embark on that process again, but with new energy. I'm gonna
Mhm.
sneeze. Mm, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. I am ready to embark on this next chapter, literally, with new energy and new wisdom, and new discipline
Mhm.
to get it out. I think I also deeply believe that writing a book needed to be hard, and I made that my truth. And
Mhm.
guess what happened? Every step of that process was
Mhm.
painful.
Yeah.
And so going into writing this next book,
Mhm.
um, which I think might be like the book, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, I'm trusting and believing that it can be fun and
Mhm.
that it can be simple
Mhm.
and that it can make impact.
Mhm. I love that. It's not supposed to be easy, otherwise a toddler would be writing.
Right.
I'm happy you stayed consistent, and even though it was hard, you pushed through. and that shows in the work that you're doing. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
Mm. So, where can people find you and support your work?
Absolutely. So LauraAura.com
Mhm,
is my website. LauraAura.com
mhm.
is the hub for all things me. There you can find links to the Gutsy Podcast.
Mhm.
If you want to come over there and subscribe, I'd love to have you.
Oh, I
You can,
will.
yeah, if you want to connect with me on social media, all the links to that is on my website as well. I'm on TikTok the most. That's where I tend to hang out most often.
Oh,
And then of course you can learn more about my coaching programs and classes on the
mhm.
website as well.
Oh, nice. I got TikTok last week. I am so
Excellent.
I'm sorry to all the millennials. I don't understand the purpose of it or how to use it properly. But I'll learn. Yeah.
It's that well, that's the thing. You have the mentality of like, I don't get it, but I'm willing to find out if I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's for some people and it's not for others. When I first got TikTok, my handle is at that LauraAura, if anyone's interested in following
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
When I first started it, I was like, this is not for me. I'm in the wrong place.
Mhm.
But my sister actually really pushed. She's like, no, I think you really need to give it another try. I think that you could do really well on it.
Mhm.
And I did. And through that, I was also developing, like my acceptance of being seen and heard online. And so creating videos actually became kind of healing for me.
Mhm.
And now it's my favorite place to be online. So
That's
give it a try. You might be surprised.
that's awesome. So, Laura, what's next in your journey?
Oh, my friend,
Mhm.
there is in my world, there is always a what's next. Um, I think what's next and what comes immediately top to mind is I own a commercial building
Mhm.
and we are going to be renovating all 3 floors for to be like an entrepreneurial center.
Mhm.
So co-working space and event space and a place for people like-minded people to come together. And I am very ambitiously anxious to get that started.
Mhm.
And I think that's the next big step.
That's awesome. That's really cool. This was an amazing interview. It didn't feel like one. That was so amazing. Do you have any final thoughts or words for those who are watching and listening?
Yeah, I just want to encourage anybody that's listening or watching to know that you are allowed to want what you want
Mhm.
and that what it really boils down to is, are you going to pause long enough to feel what that is
Mhm.
and then give yourself permission to take action to bring it to life?
Mm.
And if you are willing and able to do those things, then you can really, really start to reclaim your life,
Mhm.
start to live a life that fulfills you in ways that you didn't know were possible.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Are you on YouTube as well?
I am on YouTube.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. I'll make sure I subscribe. I'm also on YouTube
Awesome.
as well. My podcast is.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well, we'll make sure we connect over there as well.
yeah, awesome. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time. This was so amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for holding the space for us.
You're welcome.